this is Pam Slim and Kyle Durand in Mesa, Arizona. You see the beautiful Red Mountain behind us, which is right here a little bit up the road from my office. And Kyle and I have been spending the last couple days geeking out, talking about business design and the life cycles of a business from startup all the way to sale, and also looking at what are the different legal and systems that you need to have in place in order to really minimize your stress and maximize your growth. Kyle, for those of you who don't know him, writes over at Art of Business and is an attorney, also has a postdoctorate in tax law, but is also a really seasoned entrepreneur himself and has run a lot of businesses. And so what I wanted to do is to, while I had Kyle here, answer a really common question for a lot of startup folks, which is about business structure. A really common question that I get from people when they're starting even their side hustle or a business is, what kind of business structure should I have, or do I need to even have some official business structure?
Yeah, and I think that the question gets, the root of the question is, what is a business structure, first of all? People understand, when you use the terms, the titles, they understand what it is, but a business structure essentially encases your business, all of your operations under one umbrella. Some of them provide liability protection, others are a conduit for financing and stuff. So the different types, there are several different types of business structures. The most prevalent in our community, most prevalent are the sole proprietorship, the partnership, the LLC, and then the S corp. There's also the C corp. That's generally for bigger businesses or businesses that will be seeking financing soon.
Okay. And for my international folk that are not U.S., I'm sorry, this is one area where it's just related to U.S., but for
yes.
You don't know every structure for every country in the
better
world.
Go somewhere else.
So given that, tell me if I'm wrong, that the basic structures that people might look at in very first startup would be sole proprietorship or LLC or S corp. Would that be fair?
It's interesting you bring that up, because I would throw partnership in there as well. People inadvertently get into partnerships because all it takes to start a partnership is to agree to do business together. So if you and I went out and we decided we were going to go sell lemonade by the side of the road, all of a sudden we're in a partnership. We don't even need a document. We don't have to register with the state. But otherwise, yes, the sole proprietorship, the LLC, and the S corp are the most prevalent.
Okay. So to give guidance to people, what are the ways that you can maybe sort through your decision making to know what kind of structure would make sense for you? And it might be easy if we use a couple examples first of, like, let's say we have a software engineer, somebody who's working full-time in a corporation who wants to start a side hustle and to do a little bit of consulting, maybe application development on the side. What kind of structure would you talk about with them?
Well, with the software developer, with any type of business, you want to consider the legal risks, liabilities that are out there. When you're doing software development, there are some potential liabilities. I mean, the developer could produce a product that that eats somebody's data, and they don't like it. And
like an office space that takes 1 penny
from
every transaction.
There you go. There you go. That's a perfect example. I don't know. That's kind of fraud. So that's a different issue.
Okay, that would be bad.
But seriously, there are some liability concerns there. So with a software developer, you want to make sure whatever entity you pick has some liability protection. And the sole proprietorship and the partnership don't have liability protection. So that narrows it down to the LLC or the S corp. And when you're just starting something on the side hustle, the LLC is easy to get started. It's cheap and it's effective, and it gives you that liability protection from the get-go. So I would recommend that.
Yeah, awesome. And then what about for somebody who's more just like a service professional, like a coach or a consultant, somebody who's just selling their knowledge, and they're starting out. Maybe they don't know exactly how much income they're going to earn during the year. What would you suggest?
Well, again, I think you start with, are there going to be some liability concerns? And for most coaches and consultants just starting out, there probably aren't. I mean, you don't have huge liability concerns. So you could start with a sole proprietorship. And sole proprietorship is you just start doing business, you present yourself out to the world. You don't need to register generally with the state. There may be some local registrations you have to do. The issue there is, again, you don't have any liability protection. Plus, you don't have a real business entity to separate your funds from the business's funds. And so that's always a concern. And so, again, it sounds like I'm being redundant, but I would go back to the LLC. The LLC in most states is super cheap to start. I mean, some states it's $25, $50 to start. And you get that veil of protection from liability, and you get this separation of your personal funds and the business's funds in case, comes to pass, the IRS comes knocking on your door. Yeah. So for $50, I mean, that's the best insurance you can buy.
Right. And one of the things that, we're talking right now about just people that are in the early startup stage. As businesses grow and go through time and you start to generate more revenue or get a more complex business model is where you might want to look at these other structures that would make sense depending upon the growth path that you have.
Right. One example where you would start with an S corporation is if you intend down the line that you to have investors in the business. And so that is a case I would definitely recommend. If you see your path going towards angel or venture capital or even any friends and family investing, to start an S corp at that point, because then it's real easy to issue shares for money. It makes everything nice and clear. Whereas the other types of entities, raising capital in those is really difficult.
Awesome. So we just gave you a little bit of a flavor of the kind of considerations that you might have. One of the things that I really jumped out at me as we were having these conversations these last couple days is, that I advocate scrappy testing and trying, getting out there, trying different things, seeing what works. But in the case of your business structure, if from the very beginning you take the time to figure out what you need and get the appropriate amount of liability managed, but also get the right systems in place, it means you are going to have peace of mind. And it also means that you can really protect yourself, I think, in the future from any kind of issues coming down the road. And what I find is, I am very guilty of this myself, people who are creative, who are scrappy by nature, who are testing and trying things and have the same approach to business systems, often down the road, sometimes because they have success, where it ends up coming back and biting them. So I know that's something I really took away from our conversations, and I would just recommend to folks to, if you're in the early stages, or even if you're not in the early stages, you could have been in business already for a couple of years, and it's okay. If you didn't have it set up perfectly at first, don't worry about it, but take the time to figure out what kind of business structure would make sense, go through the appropriate registrations within your particular location, and I think you'll find you'll feel better because you're making a good decision, and then you're going to set yourself up for the kind of growth that makes sense for this point in your business. So thanks, Kyle. You can find Kyle at artofbusiness.com. Also on Twitter, it's KP Durand, Durand. And of course, I'll link to it on the blog post below.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.